Welcome, everybody, to the latest installment of REST. REST stands for Resiliency and Empowerment Seminar Today. This is a show where I interview CEOs of small, mid-sized businesses, nonprofit executives, and other community leaders about their organizations, their professional journeys, and how they've been resilient in the past and today. I'm so delighted to have my friend Leah Frankel today. Leah is a retirement path strategist, successfully guiding people as they complete their careers and journey into their next chapter. Leah retired 2 years ago after a very successful 30-year career with L'Oreal USA. During her tenure with the company, she held positions of increasing responsibility and worked in several divisions, including the consumer products, professional and luxury product divisions. In her final role prior to her retirement, she was Assistant Vice President of Sales Administration for the Multicultural Beauty Division. Leah holds an MBA from Adelphi University, where she was inducted into its Profiles in Success program in February of 2017. Her perseverance, determination, and stay-the-course attitude helped to propel her to success in her college years, her career, and now in her entrepreneurial venture. And we'll hear more about that shortly. As Leah says, she is just getting started and looking forward to a very exciting and rewarding, beautiful life. With that, welcome, Leah.
Thank you, Susan. This is really exciting for me. I was saying before, it kind of brings me back a little bit to when I was doing some of my presentations to universities after I retired 2 years ago. It gave me the same kind of enthusiasm when I was going through a lot of the things that I wanted to say here, because I really wanted to make an impression to my audiences in universities. And of course, I want to make an impression here. And I believe that what I have told them really holds true for myself now and probably will hold true for myself going forward. So thank you for having me.
You're quite welcome. So let's go there. Let's go back into your career in the early days. And how did you develop this stay the course attitude, as you say?
Well, it was very interesting in the early days of my career, which I will say where it was 30 years ago or a little bit more than 30 plus. I was actually approached by a very, very dear friend and colleague of mine. We had worked together at Revlon and we had gone our separate ways for a little while. And then, as things happen, you sometimes come together again with people that you really care about the most and with whom you really have a great relationship and hold a tremendous amount of respect for. And so she sent me this email one day and she said, how would you like to come and join me in an entry-level position with L'Oreal? At the time, it was called Cosmere. And I thought to myself, gee, that sounds like an interesting opportunity. It was an entry-level position. I wasn't really all that familiar with everything L'Oreal was doing, but I certainly knew the company and how great it really was. And the opportunity to work for a company with a lot of opportunity and for my very good friend was just too good to pass up. So of course I said yes to the challenge. I didn't give it a second thought. And I always knew, during the course of my career, there were certain things, there were goals that I really wanted to accomplish. I always set the bar very, very high for myself. And there were a couple of things that I really knew that I wanted to do. I knew absolutely that I wanted to be a team lead. I wanted to lead teams and initiate all kinds of processes and systems that were going to benefit the company and really have a lasting impact, not only from my particular division, but for the organization, as a whole. And of course, when you're in a large organization, you can sometimes feel like, how am I going to really stand out? So I really wanted to make sure that as I was progressing along in my career, I was going to be the person who was going to stand out in some way, shape, or form. And the fact that I was able to be recognized for my own efforts and initiatives, as well as being a team lead, was really a testament to that. And of course, as you're progressing along a big corporate in a big corporation, you want to attain some kind of a level of I guess the word is prestige. And I said, gee, it would be great if I could really get a high position in the company. And I was happy to have been able to achieve that too. When I left the organization, like you said, I was the assistant vice president um, of sales operations, but it doesn't come easy. If you want to really reach those high goals, you have to really work hard in order to do it. And whenever I did something, because I was mostly involved with areas that concerned operations and forecasting and budgeting, compensation, very, very high levels of accuracy and integrity were absolutely paramount. So I made sure that whatever I did and whatever my teams did were absolutely accurate and really done with the highest level of integrity. And I was very, very glad that everybody knew that about me and they were able to make decisions on the information we provided them.
So I love your story. So thank you for sharing. Some things that I've taken out of what you just said was, you said yes to a challenge. You wanted to make an impact that was a very core value to you. You wanted to figure out, how can I stand out? How can I be different and recognized for my efforts? And going that extra mile and being very committed to the integrity and to the accuracy of your work.
Absolutely.
So, were there any mentors or sponsors in your career that influenced you along the way and helped you? And did you have different mentors and sponsors along the way?
I had several. The one who was the most near and dear to my heart, unfortunately, she is no longer with us. She passed away several years ago. She was the person who brought me into L'Oreal. And not only did we remain very, very close business colleagues, but it is extremely unusual in a corporate environment to maintain the personal relationship with someone that you work so closely with. And I actually reported into this woman for many years, but we had such a unique and special and respectful relationship that we were able to maintain that for all of the years that we worked together. And she was the assistant vice president in sales, promotion, and administration for quite a number of years when I worked for her. I also have a very, very close relationship with one of the vice presidents of human resources. And I also had a very, very good relationship with my direct manager, who was the vice president of sales for the multicultural beauty division at L'Oreal. And all three of these women, in their own special way, recognized what I was able to contribute to the company, but more importantly, gave me advice as to how I could improve what it was that I was doing and making it even better. But if I fast forward a little bit now,
Yes.
in an entrepreneurial world, your network changes. And while I still maintain relationships with two of those women, I actually forged a very, very great relationship with one of the mentors in the SCORE organization, who has given me such tremendous guidance and input and really helped me craft my website. So it kind of goes to show you your social networks and relationships will change. And that is actually one of the things that I talk about in my own business, but you can really leverage those new relationships as well and help them work well for you too.
One of the things I got from your story is how you've reached out, like know when to reach out to people, not be afraid to reach out to people and recognize, let's say, where you might need some support and some guidance. And so now you're doing the retirement path, and I know that you are so uh, passionate about teaching others about how to successfully prepare for retirement, given all the hard work and research that you did in preparing for your own retirement. So can you share with us how you made that transition and why you decided that you wanted to be an entrepreneur at this stage?
Absolutely. Well, it's interesting because one of the things that I talk about in my business is that there is a three-step process when you are transitioning out of the workplace into your next chapter, whether you want to call it retirement or something else, but you are leaving a primary career space. So for me personally, as I was approaching my 28th or 29th year service anniversary, I really started to take notice of a lot of things that were going on around me. And I don't believe for an instant that things happen haphazardly. I believe that there is a reason behind them, and you have to pay very, very close attention to them. And I started to see a lot of high level executives who I had even started working with were beginning to retire. But the thing that I noticed about them was that they were all retiring after their 30th service anniversary. So they had reached that goal, that milestone, that pinnacle in their career, and then decided to leave. So there I was at the cusp of my 30th year service anniversary. And I said, you know something? I accomplished everything that I wanted to in my career. I led teams, I received recognition awards, I implemented systems, I learned so much. I became extremely expert in analytics and budgeting. I wasn't going to become the CEO of the company, and that was never my intent. I had really accomplished everything that I had wanted to do. So that, together with the fact that other senior level executives were retiring, and I just knew that it was time for me to leave on a high successful note and start something else where I would be able to call it my own, where I could leverage all of the skills and talents and competencies that I acquired during my life and during my career, and where I could enter into a venture where I was relatable to my target audience. That is key. And I've even listened to a lot of online classes and things. And one of the most important things that I believe an entrepreneur can do is when they set out to form their venture, they need to make sure that they are relatable to their target audience. And I am probably the most relatable person to an audience who is transitioning out of a career into their retirement, because I did it all. I understand what is involved. It is not that easy to manage everything you need to do that involves the workplace while you're still working. You don't always have an advocate to help you. And I've gone through it all, and I've created a logical path that will help people do this. And the other thing was, I really wanted to have a more flexible schedule. I never really had that when I was working in a corporate situation, but the structure that I learned from that enabled me to now take this flexible lifestyle, put some structure into it, and really make it my own. So that's the reason that I decided to do what I wanted to do. And it's been 2 years, and I'm having a great time and really, really enjoying every moment of it.
I'm so glad that you've found your joy and your passion in your next. Tell us what's been the most challenging about having your own business.
Well, it's very interesting because when you start out on an entrepreneurial path, one of the things that you want to do, or that you really need to do, let's put it that way, as I mentioned before, especially coming out of a corporate background, is you really need to start to formulate a lot of new relationships. What you're going to find is that a lot of the people with whom you had some sort of relationship when you were working, you may not necessarily be talking to anymore. You may have a few people left, but your interests in what you're doing day to day is very different. And I realized that as well, and I started to form a whole new social and professional network early on. What I realized was, once I started to formulate these relationships, many people, for a variety of reasons, are very, very anxious to give you their opinion and tell you what they believe is best for you. And there were even some people who were saying to me, do you really think people are going to want to pay for that? So you have to kind of sort through all of the dissonance and understand that people do want to give you advice. Obviously, there are people who want to tell you what you should be doing because it's advantageous to them from a professional standpoint. But I did a lot of investigative research. I interviewed a lot of people who were in this situation, and I found out that there really was a need for this. And so I was able to kind of wade my way through all of the conversations and naysayers and what people thought it was that I should be doing. And I took all of this information and I was able to make my own decisions. So that, I would say, was probably the biggest challenge, wading through all of the dissonance and using all of the data that you've acquired to make your own decisions and trusting your gut.
And it takes, strength to, and courage, I think, to say, I'm going to do this. I know there are naysayers out there, but this is what I want to do, and really focus, to not take your focus. your value around stay the course really came to bear there, right? Your stick to it
Yes.
attitude.
Absolutely. And the thing that's really most important is, well, it can be difficult. You have to really believe in yourself and what you're doing. And that's key. You have to be true to yourself. And if that's one of the mantras that I would probably want to say, I think that's really important for people to understand. You really have to think deep down and say, I really believe that what I am doing is right. I'm not going to necessarily get positive feedback from everybody. But if I do the right amount of research and it's something that I'm really passionate about, and there isn't any major inherent risk in all of this, because that's another major piece of it. That's really what I'm doing now. And like I said, I'm really having a great time doing it too.
So I want to dig deeper into the positive mindset and self-care. That seems to be a big theme that people are talking about today, especially in these challenging times. So can you share with us what you do to maintain your positivity and what you do for self-care?
Well, every week I make sure that I am engaging in some sort of physical activity. Right now, during the whole COVID-19 situation, while we are kind of hunkered down in our residences, I think it's important, at least for me personally, I try to get out at least, twice or a few times a week and take a walk around to stretch my legs, because as I'm working, I could be sitting at this desk all day. I have to say very honestly, this past Monday, I was so immersed in what I was doing, I didn't realize I was sitting in front of this laptop for hours. And then I got up and I said, my gosh, my eyes are so tired. So that's another thing I'm trying to do. I'm trying to maintain a schedule of how long I'm sitting in front of a computer and getting up and resting my eyes, which is really important. I've scheduled a yoga class every Thursday to make sure that I'm doing that. I have a trainer that I work with, and while we aren't necessarily running outside all the time, she and I are doing a virtual run together where I have her on a Zoom. I have her on Zoom, and I'm running on my treadmill, and she's guiding me through that. So I'm certainly making sure that I do that. And after I will spend a good portion of the day working, I will probably relax in front of the TV and watch a movie, not necessarily the news, because that isn't all that relaxing right now, unfortunately. And I also am trying to do a lot of reading. I'm catching up on some of my reading, which is really important. And my husband and I are kind of taking turns doing errands and things of that nature. So I've been able to kind of balance that out in terms of my work schedule as well. So it's been good. It's been good so far.
That's great. Glad that you are taking the time and keeping yourself
Yeah.
accountable, because it I find it challenging for the small businesses and solopreneurs that I've talked to, where the owners just it's hard for them to stop. They're so dedicated, and and others are better at the self-care. Some are working on it. It's a spectrum. But it is great that you have some accountability with a trainer and with a schedule, with the yoga classes to keep you on that track. Do you have a keyword or a phrase that keeps you motivated and going? Is there something that is very special to you?
Yes. The most important phrase in my vocabulary that I have really learned through my entire journey is use your success to help others. I
Um,
don't believe that there isn't a reason for everything. And I thought about this as I was reaching the end of my career at L'Oreal, because at that time, L'Oreal was becoming very, very involved with being a good citizen. They were involved in sustainability. They had a volunteer day where people in the organization were volunteering for different organizations to help others. And I became very, very much involved with that as well. I was actually a part of a group called the Veterans Think Tank, where we were responsible for ensuring the retention of veterans in the L'Oreal workforce. And I was very successful in my career. But again, I didn't take that for granted. And at the time, if I go back to when I was in college, and specifically when I was going for my graduate degree, I don't remember a time where we had people who were in their professional lives come into the university and speak to the students and really show them what it was like to be successful. And they graduated from this university and they went on to really do something spectacular in their lives. And I thought to myself, I really think it's my responsibility, since I was successful and I graduated from Adelphi University. I made it through. I was able to achieve the goals and results that I wanted. It's really important for me to come back and let these students see what success really looks like, so that none of us really take success for granted. So I really believe in using your success to help others. I also believe in the mantra of knowing yourself. And what that really means is, when you know yourself, you know that you can kind of get to sleep at night, and you know the things that will keep you up at night, the things that you would really be concerned about. So if you really know yourself, you know that you have to make the right decisions in order to be able to do what it is that you really want to do. And at the same time, you know, you can certainly take risks when you make those decisions, but what you want to do is you may want to vet them beforehand, because sometimes if you take a risk but you don't investigate it ahead of time, you may be in for a very, very unhappy surprise later. And like you mentioned before, one of the other things that I like to say is, you know, stay the course and be perseverant and have determination. But I also like to tell people to show some grit. And that's really a lot of what people have to do these days, especially. You have to have some grit there, because not everything is easy. And right now things are very, very tough. And people can just, you know, decide, you know, I don't want to put up with all of this. I'm just going to give up. But, you know, I didn't do that at this stage of my life. And, you know, hopefully most people will realize that there is some bright light at the end of a dark tunnel, and they can stay the course and achieve what it is that they really want to do.
So grit means different things to different people. Can you define what grit means in your dictionary?
Grit to me means being tough. That's really what grit means to me. And sometimes in order to get what you want, you really have to be tough and tough things out. Um, I don't really know how corporate that sounds necessarily, but I think even in a corporate situation, you have to be tough a lot of times, because in many instances you may want to get something passed or known. You may want to appeal to certain people about certain things. You may want to try to prove a point or make a presentation, but you won't be able to do that unless you're tough, because a lot of times, like with me, you have a lot of naysayers who may try to tell you or discourage you from doing certain things. That's the time where you have to show some grit and be tough. So I think that's important, because a lot of times we do get into situations that are not always that comfortable, and in order to get what it is that you really want to achieve, you will have to display that level of toughness in order to do it.
And sort of a related question to being tough and strong is about empowerment. You know, what does empowerment mean to you, and how do you empower yourself, and how do you empower others?
Empowerment is such an interesting question, because empowerment now is something totally different to me at this point in my life than it was, say, 15 years ago. There are a lot of empowerment organizations. And when you are talking about empowerment in the corporate world, you know, where I was, let's say, 15, 18, 20 years ago, in a corporate world, empowerment really means climbing the corporate ladder. That's really what empowerment is a lot of times. It's, I want to get to that next level. I want to get that promotion. I want to have X number of people reporting into me. I want to make a difference. And I had that level of empowerment when I was in corporate America, and it's not a bad thing. But that's very, very different than empowerment when you are an entrepreneur and a solopreneur. What empowerment means to me now is really being true to myself and being able to develop my business in a way that I really want it to be. And what that means is for me to be the subject matter expert in my area and providing valuable information for people who are making that transition from the workplace into retirement or into their next chapter. So, you know, in terms of my personal brand, for instance, that would really be my personal brand. That would be my empowerment, to be the subject matter expert, you know, in this particular area. And that's the way that I'm empowering myself. But at the same time, I'm happy to say that I can actually empower others. And I'm even bringing some people who are members of my family into my business as well, who are really helping me with various aspects. So not only is this initiative really benefiting me, but it's actually, I'm providing some interesting opportunities for people who are very close to me as well. So it's been a good thing all the way around.
So wonderful. And I love what you said about the difference in empowerment, what that means and has meant to you at different stages. Talk to me about resiliency. How have you been resilient, either in the corporate world or now with your business? Talk to me about that.
Resiliency is important. And that actually, when you're talking about grit, you have to have some grit in order to be resilient. The corporate world is a very, very tough place in which to be. A lot of times, if I were going to make a presentation or make a suggestion, there were times when people didn't necessarily agree with me. But in terms of being resilient, the way that you can really be resilient, and again, sometimes it's not easy, is you have to understand that the disagreements and the arguments should be on a professional basis and you can't take it personally. That's the best way that you can really be resilient in a corporate situation. And it can actually translate itself even into an entrepreneurial situation because, again, like I mentioned before, if somebody comes up to me and says, well, you want to do this, you really think someone's going to pay for it? You have to understand this person may not really understand what it is that you want to do. They may just be making an offhanded comment. Again, you can't take it personally. You have to be resilient and know yourself that you're trying to provide value in a specific area that may be a little bit of a disruptor than what other people are used to. But again, you have to stay the course, do your research, be determined, understand that this is what's called being true to yourself. And that's how you can really be resilient as well. I've learned to listen to what people tell me, understand the position or where they're coming from, digest all of the data, and then make the best decision that I really believe is right for me.
One of the things that I know a lot of entrepreneurs, business owners, just business people in general experience rejection.
Mm.
And I know that's particularly hard for women. So talk to me about handling rejection and being resilient from that.
Handling rejection. Well, in terms of rejection, if you want to take a look at it even from let's just say a corporate perspective, I
Yes.
had many disappointments in my corporate life as well. I had situations where I maybe didn't necessarily get the promotion that I was looking for, where people were promoted and I thought it should have been me. It's difficult, and it is hard to be resilient in that atmosphere. But sometimes you have to move on from that, not necessarily again get all tremendously angry about it, but understand what is the ultimate goal and try to persevere and move on from that. And that is not easy because in a corporate situation, there were so many people. And a lot of times people sit around and saying, it should have been me, it should have been me. And it is difficult to move past that. But my recommendation would probably be sometimes you have to do that and you definitely have to move past it. In terms of resiliency or rejection when you're an entrepreneur, I've been experiencing certain things that obviously aren't necessarily going my way. As a matter of fact, if I'm running, let's just say I'm running a workshop or I'm running a program, I'm doing, as much publicity as I want to, but I only end up with a handful of people. So what do I do? Do I, pout about it and say I'm going to cancel the whole thing because I'm not getting a lot of people coming? Even if I get a handful of people, I still go on with the event. That, there's a little bit of rejection in there because you would have wanted a lot more to show up, but you move through because the whole idea is to get as much practice and visibility as possible. And so in that way, you can kind of move forward from the rejection and make sure that it happens the way that you want to. Another thing that I can say is that unfortunately with this whole COVID-19 situation, I was planning a very, very interesting event at the Microsoft retail store in Roosevelt Field where I had over 40 people signed up for this thing. And unfortunately, I had to cancel it. So what am I doing? I'm pivoting and I'm now going to be doing this online. So there is a way to manage rejection or things that don't necessarily go your way and kind of make something out of it that can at least be manageable. So that's one of the other ways that I'm trying to manage the whole rejection part of this.
So one of the things I admire is you're saying, like, look, this is the situation.
Mm-hmm.
How can I take some control of the situation and turn it into something else?
Mm-hmm.
And how can I make it work, even though it might not have been the original vision, let's say,
Mm-hmm.
which is terrific. So, what is one key takeaway or insight that you would like our audience to remember about our conversation today?
The most important thing that I think people should remember or keep in mind is to show appreciation to those who help you. All along my career path, there were people who helped me in some way, shape, or form. And even now in my entrepreneurial world, I can't work in a silo, especially when you're an entrepreneur. You need a big network. You need people to get to know who you are. I've had over the past several weeks people introduce me to other people who introduce you to other people. That's how you really make it in this entrepreneurial world. So for people who help me, I try to say thank you to them. I will try to introduce them to somebody else, for instance, or give them some interesting information that may help them in their business or something that will benefit them. I really believe that when people know that you have tried to help them and you tell them how much you appreciate it, it means the world to them. It certainly does to me. I mean, I've had people thank me for various things, and it really makes a very, very big difference, and it's really a big deal. So if I had one takeaway, I would say show appreciation to those who help you.
And Leah, I so appreciate you and you sharing very authentically about your story. I want to give appreciation back and let people know how they can find you. So, what are the best ways to find you?
Ah, well, thank you. And first of all, Sue, it was so nice to be on this. It was a great opportunity. I value our friendship as well. We've known each other for quite a while already. And again, that's how you make new social connections and make new friends in this entrepreneurial world. Um,
Yes.
the way people can find me is I am certainly on LinkedIn. I am on Facebook as well. And I do have a Twitter and Instagram account, but my newly launched website is the best place to find me, and not only to find me, but to really understand what my business is all about. And that can be if you Google retirement planning concierge, retirementplanningconcierge.com. That is where you will be able to find me, and you will be able to see the website and understand what I am all about.
Awesome. So I'm going to repeat that. Leah's on LinkedIn. You can find her at Leah Frankel and on Facebook as ruthleah.frankel. On Leah's website, which is retirementplanningconcierge.com. Thanks again, Leah, for sharing, and thanks to you all for watching. Until the next time.
Thank you, Susan. Have a very, very good afternoon.
Thanks, Leah.